5 wooden poles were crossed like crude crucifixes, and on each one a suspended figure hung barely alive. They were tall, muscular, their bodies partially stripped bare, covered in bruises, whip marks, and crusted blood. Ropes dug deep into their wrists and ankles, stretching their limbs under the harsh midday sun like animal hides left out to dry. Their chests rose and fell in shallow, fragile breaths. They were still alive. Silas took a step forward, then froze. One of them lifted her head. Her eyes were deep and dry, but there was still a flicker of life burning inside. Her cracked lips trembled, parched from thirst. The sound that came out was barely a breath. "Please don't leave us here." The sound tore through the air, not because it was weak, but because it came from someone pushed beyond the edge of despair. Silas felt his chest tighten. 12 years ago in Tennessee, he had heard cries like that, too. Amid the smoke and the screams. Back then, he had turned away. He had survived, but the guilt had followed him every day since. This time, Silas Ward walked straight up the hill. He laid his shotgun on the ground, then drew his knife and began cutting the ropes. The knife in Silas Ward's hand trembled slightly as the steel edge met the rough rope. He cut each knot slowly, carefully, as if the smallest mistake could take the life hanging in front of him. The first woman collapsed into his arms. Her body was heavy and solid, the smell of dried sweat, dust, and old blood clinging to her. As Silas laid her down, the ragged cloth on her back slipped to the side. He froze. Her back was covered in old burns and deep twisted scars. Some looked as though they had been carved with heated metal. This was no accident. This was not war. This was deliberate torture. Silas's heart pounded so hard he thought his knees might give out. Another image layered itself over the moment: a muddy clearing in Tennessee 12 years ago. Gunsmoke screams. A young girl being dragged away between 2 soldiers. Silas back then had been young, afraid, and foolish enough to believe that if he just looked away, it would all stop on its own. He had turned away. And since then, he had survived, but he had never truly lived again. Silas clenched his jaw and kept cutting. The second person, the third, the fourth, each one collapsed with the same weight of having been treated like a thing, not a person. By the time the last one was lowered to the ground, Silas was gasping for breath. His shirt was soaked through with sweat. He knelt among the 5 motionless bodies. His calloused hand pressed against the cracked dry earth. "Not this time," he whispered. "Not this time." He carried each of them into the cabin. No names, no questions about where they came from. Just water, clean cloth, and the silence that was needed. When the light from the oil lamp fell across their battered bodies, Silas turned his face away for a long while to keep his hands from shaking. One of them opened her eyes. Her dark gaze was steady, startlingly clear despite her weakened state. She looked at Silas for a long moment, then spoke, her voice narrow, but firm. "You did not abandon us." Silas nodded. Outside, the Arizona wind still moved across the grasslands. But inside that worn wooden cabin, a choice had been made, and it would bring blood, bullets, and a redemption Silas Ward had been waiting for 12 long years. The sound of hooves echoed just as the sun touched the edge of the hill, not hurried. It was the sound of men who believed they had the right to come back and reclaim what they had lost. Silas Ward was wiping dried blood from the arm of one of the 5 women when he heard it. He stood up immediately. He did not need to look out the window to know how many were coming. War had taught him that much. 10 horses stopped in front of the cabin. 10 men, dust-covered coats, rifles slung across their backs, whips hanging at their sides. In the center was the mining camp foreman, clean-shaven face. Eyes cold as stone, a half-smile on his lips. "Old man," he called out. "I came to take back what was stolen." Silas stepped onto the porch. The shotgun rested steady in his hands. The barrel pointed toward the ground, but it was anything but loose. The wind lifted his coat, revealing the lean, solid frame of a man who had survived more storms than those men could ever imagine. "There is nothing here that belongs to you," Silas said. His voice was low and even not loud, not soft. "Only people," the foreman laughed. A few of the men behind him chuckled along. People? You do not understand. They are mine. They ran. I am just here to take back what is mine. Silas did not answer. He took half a step back, fully blocking the door to the cabin behind him. Inside, no one spoke a word. But he knew 5 pairs of eyes were following every breath he took. One of the men stepped forward, his hand on the grip of his rifle. Step aside, old man. This has nothing to do with you. In that moment, Silas lifted the shotgun, not in a rush, just enough for everyone to know the line had been drawn. Take one more step, he said. And I will shoot. Silence pressed down, heavy as a heartbeat. Then the foreman narrowed his eyes. You think you can stand alone against 10 men? Silas stared straight at him. I have stood against more than that. The man laughed again, but this time no one joined in. He spat on the ground and turned his horse. Fine. Keep them. But remember this, you just chose a side. 10 horses turned. Dust rose in clouds before they disappeared behind the hill. Silas stood still for a long time after they were gone. He knew they would be back. And next time it would not just be words. He turned back into the cabin and locked the door tight. Then he started counting bullets. It's great to have you here. Please subscribe to my channel to support me. Night fell over Arizona faster and colder than Silas Ward had expected. The wind howled through the mountain passes, whistling around the cabin like the whispers of restless spirits. He bolted the door shut, slid the wooden beam across it, and began reinforcing each window frame with old planks of wood. Inside the cabin, 5 Apache women lay scattered around the glow of a single oil lamp. No one slept. Only the sound of heavy breathing and wide, strangely alert eyes filled the room. Silas leaned his shotgun against the wall, then sat down and began wiping each bullet clean with a dry cloth. Every faint click of metal made one of the women flinch. Her hand gripped tighter around a small dagger hidden beneath a tattered blanket. Silas noticed. There is no need, he said quietly, without looking up. If they get through the door, I will hear them first. One of the women slowly sat up. Her shoulders were bruised, her body still in pain, but she stood tall, taller than Silas as she stepped closer. The oil lamp cast its light on firm muscles and old scars layered over fresh ones. We are not hiding, she said. Her voice was hoarse, but steady. If they come back, we stand with you. The others sat up one by one. No one cried. No one begged. One of them snapped a broom handle in half, testing the weight of the wood in her hands. Another tied back her long hair with the sharp, efficient motion of a warrior preparing for battle. Silas looked up at them for the first time in a long while. He had seen strong men fall apart under the weight of fear. But here in this tiny wooden cabin stood 5 women who had just walked out of hell. And none of them bowed their heads. You do not need to do this, Silas said. The woman closest to him shook her head. They hung us up to die. If we die again, we die on our feet. The words dropped into the room like a stone in still water far off in the distance. A sound rumbled, not hooves, something deeper, something older. Silas shot to his feet and moved to the window, staring out toward the dark ridge. He was not sure what he had heard, but the 5 women were. One of them whispered almost with reverence. Drums. Silas turned. What drums? She answered, her eyes glowing in the dark. Tribal drums. Silas tightened his grip on the shotgun. He did not know whether those drums signaled salvation or destruction. But he knew one thing tonight. No one in that cabin was alone. They returned just as the moon crested over the ridge. No shouting, no names called. Just 10 figures stepping out of the darkness, spreading out like predators long accustomed to killing. Their horses had been tied off far from the cabin. This time they had not come to talk. Silas Ward heard them first, the crunch of boots on gravel. He raised his hand and signal. The oil lamp was snuffed out. The cabin sank into thick, heavy darkness. The first bullet tore through the window like ripping cloth. Silas rolled aside. The shotgun roared. Its flash lighting the room for a brief second. A scream of pain rang out from the dark. He did not pause to check. War had taught him. Stand still and you die. Gunfire exploded. Wood splintered. Dust fell like rain. A bullet grazed Silas's shoulder, burning hot. He clenched his teeth, shifted positions, and fired again. Outside, they cursed and shouted. One charged straight for the front door and fell the moment he reached it. His body hit the dry ground with a thud. Rifle clattering away, but 10 men do not stop for one. 2 circled around the back. Silas heard Wood being struck hard. Before he could